The paper made a sliding sound on the white tablecloth, like a dry leaf blowing across concrete. Margaret Ashford held it down with 2 manicured fingers, her gold rings clicking against the porcelain rim of her wine glass, and looked at me across 60 wedding guests as if I were something dirty she had found on her shoe. "Sign it," she said, her voice carrying clear to the back tables where Ethan's cousins sat. "We all know why you are here, Fiona, and we are not going to pretend any longer. You brought nothing to this family, and you will leave with nothing." The dining room fell so quiet you could hear the ice melting in the water pitchers. My future sister-in-law, Vivian, smiled into her napkin, a tiny, satisfied movement of her mouth that she did not even try to hide. At the far end of the long-head table, Ethan sat staring into his lap, his knuckles white against his cloth napkin, saying nothing. I looked down at the top page of the document. It was a prenuptial agreement, 40 pages thick, declaring that in the event of a divorce, I would waive all rights to any Ashford assets, present or future, and accept a lump sum payout of $20,000 in exchange for complete silence and a legal change of my name back to Slater. I picked up the silver pen sitting beside my plate. I felt the weight of it in my hand, heavy and cool, and I saw Margaret relax her shoulders, convinced she had won. She thought I was the broke girl from the edge of town who had managed to catch her high school teacher's son. She thought the blue leather folder sitting on the floor beside my purse was an empty briefcase I had brought to look important. What she did not know was that I had spent the last 3 weeks doing some reading of my own, and what I was about to sign was not going to be her document at all. To understand why I sat at that head table in a $60 dress with my grandmother's work gloves tucked inside my handbag, you have to go back 12 years. I started my company, Slater Grounds, with one rusted-out pickup truck, a second-hand lawn mower, and $1,100 I saved from working 12-hour shifts at a diner. Today, I own 40 commercial trucks, 90 full-time employees, and the state contracts for winter snow removal across 3 entire counties. When a blizzard hits at 3 in the morning, my crews are the reason the emergency rooms stay open and the supply trucks keep moving. That business made me a very wealthy woman, but you would never know it by looking at me. I drive an old truck with a dent in the tailgate. I wear flannel shirts from the farm supply store. And my hands are permanently calloused because I still get into the dirt when my crews fall behind. I learned young that money makes people act strange. Every time someone in my past found out I had $1 to spare, their face changed. The math started in their eyes, and the asking followed soon after. So I built a habit of looking like I had nothing, using my quiet life like armor to keep the wrong people away. Then I met Ethan Ashford in a high school parking lot at 6 in the morning after an 8-inch snowfall. He was a history teacher at the school my company plowed, and he was out there in a worn coat trying to shovel the walkways himself before the students arrived. I walked over, showed him how to throw the snow without ruining his lower back. And we ended up standing in the freezing cold for 20 minutes arguing about a book we both loved. He did not ask what I made. He did not look at my truck with judgment. And for the first time in years, I let my guard down because his eyes were kind and his hands were honest. 2 years later, I realized that Ethan was the only honest thing in a family that had run out of everything except their last name. The Ashfords were local royalty, the kind of old family whose name was carved into the archway of the public library and hung under framed portraits at the Historical Society. But Ethan had stepped away from all of that, taking a public school teaching job and living in a small rented house on the edge of town. He used to tell me that his family lived in a world made of glass and old paper. But I did not understand what he meant until the first time he brought me to his mother's lake house for dinner. Margaret Ashford met me at the front door wearing 3 strands of pearls and a smile that felt like ice water. She looked at my simple shoes, asked me with fake sweet concern if I was the person who did the gardening for the neighbors, and then spent the rest of the night correcting my speech in front of her guests. Vivian sat across from me, asking pointed questions about my background, searching for proof that I came from nothing. I sat there quietly, holding a business empire under my own name, and let them believe I was just a girl with a small lawnmower and big dreams. I let them look down on me because I was tired of being alone. My grandmother had raised me in a rented house with no other relatives, and when she died, she left me nothing except a pair of worn, leatherwork gloves and a simple truth: worth is built with your own hands, not given by someone else. But a part of me still wanted to belong to a big family with history, tradition, and Sunday dinners. So when Ethan took me back to that snowy parking lot on our 2nd anniversary and proposed with a modest gold band he had saved 3 months to buy, I said yes immediately, believing I was stepping into a real home. The months leading up to the wedding were a steady stream of quiet insults disguised as high manners. Margaret took over every detail of the event, moving it to the expensive private country club, cutting my field workers from the guest list, and reminding me at every opportunity that I was being elevated into a world where I did not belong. Ethan always told me to be patient, asking me to keep the peace and not give his mother anything to complain about. I loved him, so I shrank myself down, held my tongue, and swallowed every cruel remark, telling myself that this was just the price you pay to join a family. Everything changed 3 weeks before the rehearsal dinner when I took a wrong turn down a hallway at the lake house looking for a bathroom. I passed the open door of Margaret's private study and heard her voice talking to Vivian inside. She was talking about selling off the last piece of land behind the boathouse to pay for the country club bill. Her tone sharp and desperate as she said, "We have to keep up appearances until the wedding is over, because that girl is clearly after what little money we have left. And I will not let a common gold digger take the Ashford name to the bank." I stood frozen in the dark hallway, watching through the crack in the door as Margaret gestured toward a wall covered in light-colored rectangles where expensive paintings used to hang. The Ashfords were not wealthy at all. They were drowning in debt, selling off their heirlooms behind closed doors while maintaining a fake image of old money royalty to the rest of the town. They were projecting their own greed onto me, terrified that I was going to ruin them, completely unaware that the quiet woman sitting at their dinner table could have bought their entire collapsing estate cash down without feeling the loss. Instead of getting angry, I walked back to my truck, called my corporate lawyer, and spent the next 2 weeks preparing for the trap I knew they were building. My attorney drafted a complete, ironclad asset protection agreement, detailing the true scope of my business, my real estate holdings, and my investment portfolio, while explicitly stating that no member of the Ashford family would ever have access to a single cent of my wealth. I put the thick stack of papers into my blue leather folder, drove to the rehearsal dinner, and sat calmly through 3 courses of whispered insults while I waited for Margaret to make her move. When Margaret finally slid her prenuptial agreement across the table in front of 60 high society guests, calling me a gold digger who brought nothing to the table, the room went dead silent. I did not cry, I did not lower my head, and I did not look at Ethan, who was staring down at his plate in silence. Instead, I reached down, pulled my blue leather folder out of my bag, and laid my own legal document directly on top of hers. Then, I unscrewed my silver pen, signed the last page of my paper with a strong, clean signature, and pushed the entire folder down the long table toward Ethan's father. Mr. Ashford opened the folder, flipped to the financial disclosure page, and his face turned entirely white as his eyes ran down the long list of commercial properties, state contracts, and 8-figure bank balances sitting under the name Slater Grounds. His hands began to shake so hard he almost dropped his glass, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water as he realized that the quiet woman his wife had just publicly humiliated was worth more than his family had owned in 3 generations. Margaret snatched the folder from his hands, her eyes scanning the total net worth column, and her face went from pale white to bright red as the silence in the room became unbearable. I stood up from the table, picked up my purse containing my grandmother's work gloves, and looked at Margaret with a calm, steady gaze that made her pull back into her chair. I came here tonight ready to love your son and share everything I had built with a family I thought was real, I said, my voice carrying clearly across the silent dining room. But my grandmother taught me that true value comes off your hands, not off a brass plaque on a library wall. And I will never let anyone make me shrink just to sit at their table. I walked out of the country club dining room into the cool night air, leaving the paper, the fake luxury, and the Ashford name behind me forever. Ethan ran out into the parking lot a few minutes later, begging me to come back and telling me we could fix everything. But when I looked into his eyes, I saw a man who would always ask me to be smaller so his mother could feel big. I got into my old pickup truck, started the engine, and drove home toward the business I built with my own 2 hands. Knowing that true peace is never found by hiding who you are just to fit inside someone else's broken house.